Good afternoon, everyone. So we are the final panel of the day, but we're going to have a whole lot of fun because this session is particularly about innovation. My name is Monique Kuykendoll Quarterman, and I serve as Executive Director for the Office for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development. I always like to start with a smile and gratitude. Thank all of you for your role in advancing energy, for being so engaged in this opportunity that is innovation in our Commonwealth of Kentucky. Kentucky Innovation has a very unique perspective of being able to collaborate with not only large corporations, but small businesses in every town across our Commonwealth, colleges and universities, including 24 regional and rural colleges and universities, as well as 2 Research One universities, University of Louisville, University of Kentucky, and several community and technical colleges. All of them, through Kentucky Innovation, are supported to access tools like commercialization and intellectual property. And as we think about the future of energy, not only for our nation, but for our state, it makes me so excited that Kentucky is well positioned and well tooled to be a leader in this area. And so I am absolutely thrilled to join you today. Huge thanks to the Energy and Environment Cabinet, and grateful to be here at the Governor's Conference on Energy and Environment. Allow me to introduce you to our awesome panelists here today, and I will briefly introduce them all before having them speak to a little bit about what they do in their companies and day to day. Today we have joining us Louis Buck from Booker No RNG and Fertilizer Project, Andrew Isherwood from Hydrogen Energy Hubs, and John Gagel from Lexmark Solar Array. Huge kudos to Lexmark. They are one of the founding members of our Kentucky Intellectual Property Alliance. Wonderful community engagement with that corporation. And you know, as I open it up for them to tell us about themselves, their companies, and a most recent project that they're really excited about, please leave us with a surprising fact that you would like the audience to know leaving here. And with that, I'll welcome up Louis Buck to tell us a little bit more about Booker No and Fertilizer Project.
I think we can stay seated.
Sure.
Well, the first slide's coming up. It's always exciting to be on the last panel of a conference because we all know what happens next. They draw for the door prize, right? I just saw Kerry Johnson bring in the keys for that Ford F-150 Lightning, right? You got to be present to win, Secretary, right? So we're excited about that. That's an excellent door prize for the conference, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
I'm Louis Buck, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for Three River Energy Partners. Three Rivers Energy Partners is a Michigan-based company, lots of experience in traditional oil and gas, but the innovative part is we've found solutions in the renewable space. I'm joined by our founder, John Rivers, that the company's named after. He's really our patriarch as much as anything because it's a family business to a certain extent, and he's joined by George Palace, who does our financial work with us and a key partner. You can see some of my experiences. I've enjoyed the conference. When I was the chief hydrologist at Tennessee Valley Authority, we did a lot of water resources. So FEMA mapping and the last question about how hard did it rain in eastern Kentucky, I've been at that town hall meeting too. I was the deputy commissioner at the Tennessee Department of Agriculture when Billy Ray Smith was the commissioner up here. I was Tennessee's master tobacco buyout exec when John Mark Hack was running it up here in Governor Patton's office. So it's good to be back in the bluegrass state under different conditions. You can see some of the other things I have done. Moving along, I asked the hotel if I could borrow one of the props out front. Now, most people see this and think of bourbon on the inside. For an ag guy like me, I see corn, barley, and rye. And yesterday I would have talked about regenerative agriculture because that's kind of the pathway I come from. But after the last session, I'm not sure now if I'm recycling corn, barley, and rye as fertilizer or if it's a regenerative ag. And I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But that was what it's about. We're excited to be partnered with Bean Centauri at the Booker No plant. We are building a anaerobic digester plant to make renewable natural gas. So the last panel before lunch was asking a lot about RNG. We're going to make about 1.3 million MMBTUs per year there. So that our clients, in part, the innovative part, I think, was they needed commodity gas. They needed heat for their expansion. So all of our clients in this space need more energy. And the innovation that Three Rivers brings, because anaerobic digesters have been around a long time. That's not really new technology, which is the spirit of it, but it's applied in a new and different way. So the whole stillage comes, the corn, barley, and rye go in. Biological process happens. Gases come off, make alcohol. What comes out, the whole stillage, goes into our anaerobic digesters. Biological processes happen. We capture the gas that comes out, methane, clean it up. What comes out of the digesters is a natural fertilizer. Everything that's in the corn, barley, and rye, in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, comes out in the liquid fertilizer. So that's how we're doing it different. And working with the cabinet, our point of contact was Kerry Johnson. It's just been great because the overlap of energy and environment is really, really key here. This is a valuable fertilizer, and our challenge is to get it on the corn. As that says, if it all goes on corn, we have enough nutrients in that liquid stream for about 35,000 acres of corn, which is approaching half of what goes in the bottle. And you don't get more regenerative ag than that. So that corn makes the gas, makes the fertilizer. We bring the corn back. And so Booker Noe and the Bean Centauri folks have been willing to prioritize buying that corn back. So it's, as we heard with the water systems, a very regional approach. But somebody else, it's kind of been the theme, Monique, the whole day. You can get from point A to B, I'll leave out the rest. We've got to get the nutrients out of our digesters out to corn country, right? So corn, pasture, hay. Part of the interesting part, the fun part, in talking with Jordan and the biomass and others in the room, we're still learning of what we can do with the fertilizer. It's low carbon. It never touches fossil fuels after the first corn comes in, right? So whatever we grow, as we like to say at the end of the pipeline, is special and different. So it can be low carbon energy crops, and we have a real opportunity to work with the community to fully develop that and optimize that. So we can provide that. It's currently, fertilizer is very high this year. Commercial synthetic fertilizer made from fossil fuels is very high this year. Ours is sustainable, and we can, when you pay your water bill, you really, the water's free, you really just pay for the pumping and the pipes and the maintenance. That's kind of our approach we're taking with the fertilizer. We would love to break even and recover our operating costs to get it out there to store it in holding ponds, lined and covered. We're aware of sinkholes, lined and covered, and all those kind of things. But that's, we can offer it at a deep discount. And part of what I'm supposed to do is work with the local farmers and help that move forward. That's about it. There's some pictures of what it will look like. Again, there will be covered ponds both on site near Booker Noe and out in the countryside. We're building enough storage, realizing that fertilizer application is seasonal. So that's gives you a picture of what we're doing. Thanks.
That's fantastic, Lewis. And as I pass over this slide advancer, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain how existing technologies interact with new, right? The term anaerobic digester, that's a big word, even for me. So to have people in community that care about local engagement in these projects and explaining what the technology means is so important. Thank you for your awesome work. Let's hear from Andrew Isherwood from Hydrogen Energy Hubs. Tell us more about yourself, Andrew.
Thanks. So bad news for everybody. I was a terrible student, so I did not prepare my presentation for you. So I did not do my homework. But once again, thanks for the invite. Really fortunate to be here. My name is Andrew Isherwood. I'm the Director of Origination and Development at TC Energy. So I always like to do this in any room. I would say, show of hands, who has heard of TC Energy? So I'm going to say this is pretty good. This is pretty
Pretty good.
When I was in California a couple months ago, it was 0. So we're better than 0. So that's good. For kind of some background, so TC Energy in effect is the largest midstream company in North America, and so we move through gas pipelines and the crude oil pipelines that we own. We move about accountable for a company to meet those reductions. No small task, given that I described before, most of our business is burning hydrocarbons to move other hydrocarbons, so kind of hard to decarbonize. And in addition to that, so our job is to work with third-party customers, like steel companies, chemical companies, auto manufacturers, to effectively help them meet their ESG targets on decarbonization. And so that kind of fits in, we call them like 4 swim lanes, 4 buckets. So the first of which would be energy efficiency. So in this room, my energy efficiency would be replacing light bulbs with LEDs. The large scale energy efficiency is replacing boilers, old boilers, whether they run on propane, natural gas, hydrogen, or in some instances, there's huge amounts of energy loss at industrial facilities, and so you build a combined cycle cogeneration facility where they can produce power from waste heat. So that's kind of one swim lane. The second swim lane is green gas, hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels, anything that's a lower carbon intensive feedstock. And then finally, carbon capture and sequestration. So the final solution, just take the CO2, shove it in the ground. So specifically in Kentucky, I like the show of hands before because we operate about, I think it's 1,500 miles of pipeline in Kentucky. We have about 13 compressor stations, so that's probably about 10,000 horsepower. And then we also have jobs, and we've done a lot of construction projects in the state. Selfishly, I want to talk about the next projects, and so I would say the nice part is that we made an announcement yesterday. So the John Rivers, Louis Buck, and George with Three Rivers, we've actually partnered with them to actually help them deliver on their projects because it's one, really important from a sustainable ag production, but also it produces RNG, or renewable natural gas. And so when you think of your home where you're using natural gas to cook, heat, why not lower the carbon intensity of that natural gas that you're using to cook or heat? And so I think what I'm really excited with is when you look at what Three Rivers is doing, that is innovation. That is taking something out of nothing, effectively, and making natural gas, which can then be put on the pipeline grid, deployed in an industrial, an LDC, anything like that. And then finally, because I think hydrogen was in the title, you know, I unfortunately can't disclose anything specifically to Kentucky, but when you look at our company on hydrogen, we have some very public relationships with refineries and also long-haul transportation companies, where basically our job is to make sure that when those long-haul transportation companies sell a truck, sell a fuel cell, sell a Freightliner, Kenmore, basically that they have fuel. So we are going to be in the production of hydrogen market. We have a very public project in Canada. I would say, you know, in one instance, you know, don't believe the press releases sometimes, because I will say that selfishly in the United States, we have about 5 projects which are significantly more advanced than that project in Canada. And so I'm particularly excited in Kentucky. I think the Team Kentucky team is probably sick of hearing from me because I keep telling them that I've committed to build hydrogen production in the state. So I guess in a year, if we're back in the same place, you can either, you know, throw tomatoes at me if I haven't done it, or you can be really excited. I would say one kind of interesting fact I would say to leave everybody with, I'd say, you know, when you look at kind of all the tools and I think some of the questions around infrastructure bills, the IRA that got passed that has a bunch of tax incentives, I think I'm optimistic generally, also because I'm paid to be optimistic. But when I look at the companies like a Lexmark, like a Toyota, who was on stage earlier, what you're seeing is the time horizon for decarbonization is moving up. And these technologies, what I'd leave everybody with is, you know, this isn't science anymore. This isn't a science project. It's time to actually perform. Like, we've started practicing, and so like the 3 Ps, prepare, practice, perform, we're ready to perform. And I would say is that what I'm excited with is, particularly with my company, is we have the ability to execute on these projects. So.
It's fantastic, Andrew. And you didn't need those slides at all. Very interesting material. And congratulations on your collaboration, truly. One of the best things about what we get to do is working across disciplines, working across the state, working across nation to bring the most innovative solutions right here to Kentucky. So I love to hear about collaboration. And we're so fortunate to get to do something that is so interesting. Met a wonderful gentleman as we were getting mic'd up to come on stage. And he says, this is really cool. I love to hear more about solar. We hear this in the streets and our communities all the time. And when the gentleman was micing me up, I saw John's face, and his face just lit up. And I could tell what you were thinking, John. You were thinking, save it for the panel, save it for the panel. Tell me a little bit more about Lexmark Solar Array.
All right, so it's a really cool project. At least I think it's cool, because it is. It's something unique in the state. Not that solar hasn't been around for a long time, but you know, having a international company headquartered in Kentucky, and literally less than 5 miles down the road, we're building a 2-megawatt solar array, and we are going to use it to power our facility. So how did we get there? And I guess I should say I'm Chief Sustainability Officer for Lexmark. So we approach sustainability in a lot of different areas, our products and our operations, and then with our employees, our people on a global scale. So we have programs and processes and goals and targets that are tied to both our products and our operations. So when you look at our product piece, one of the things that we, and really both products and operations, we wanted to come out and do something meaningful related to carbon neutrality. How could we get there? We all know there's technology challenges. We all know there's more than just carbon. There are 5 or 6 greenhouse gases that we have to eventually address. So how are we going to take some reasonable balance approaches that would get us to where we could actually be in a place that we're helping, right? We're actually truly making a difference. And being a company that's headquartered in Kentucky, how do we make a difference here? What can we learn? And then translate those learnings, not just through STEM education initiatives, which I'll talk a little bit about, but to our other facilities globally. So one of the things that's really cool about what we've done is we've taken our goal. Our goal here is to be carbon neutral by 2035 in our operations. And then we drilled down in that goal. It's like, how are we going to get there? Where are our strong points and where are our weak points? Where are we doing well and where are we not doing well? So one of the things, you know, listening to some of the earlier presentations, we were doing really well, and we have done really well on the product side because we've been doing what we call life cycle assessments. It's been up on a few charts before for well over a decade. So every new product that we develop and manufacture today, we do a life cycle assessment on it. We have them third-party verified and audited, and we actually post them publicly as environmental product declarations. So we had been doing that for a long time. And that got us to a point, I didn't get to tell you because I couldn't when we were meeting before. Just a couple weeks ago, we announced our first 2 carbon neutral products globally. So for us, that was a big step forward. But let's talk about solar, right? Because when we stepped back and we looked at ourselves, and this is still a true comment today, we were not so good at renewable energy. How much renewable energy did we have in our portfolio? What does not so good mean? Not so good means 0. We had 0, right? So we knew we had to make a difference. We had to make a change. We recognized that the 0 couldn't stay 0. We needed to get better. But we had a lot of challenges to get beyond 0. So what did we do? We started working with the Energy and Environment Cabinet. Kenya Stump, she was mentioned earlier. We would not be sitting here today without Kenya's help. We would not be sitting here today without Tony Hatton and his group's help, the governor's help, the entire Energy and Environment Cabinet. I can't name them all, but they've been fantastic to work with, so thank you. I also want to tell you, it took us 10 years to get where we are today. 10 years, multiple hurdles, regulatory hurdles, provider hurdles, internal hurdles, right? We had to get the groups within Lexmark to understand why we needed to do this. Why was this so important? And then what happened is the world kind of came towards us. We had a vision. We had a vision to have more renewable energy. We had a vision to incorporate it into our STEM initiatives, to be innovative. We sold the vision internally. And then we got a lot of good help from, like I said, the Energy Environment Cabinet, but then our customers. So one of the things in the questions, you know, that we'll get to here in a little bit, the international pressure on us as a manufacturer of an electronic product and products has just ratcheted up, you know, exponentially. I can't tell you how fast it's going. But today, it just didn't start today. It started a long time ago. So we had to figure this out. We had momentum. We had good, positive moving forward. And advance my slide here. There we go. All right, so what did we have? We have a 2-megawatt array. It's on our headquarters property that's literally probably less than 3 miles from here. It's right down Newtown Pike. So we started building that midsummer. That picture I should probably go to this one. This picture you can see is at the end of August. At the end of August, all the panels were in place, but you see some holes in the panels, right? There's some gaps. Well, that's where the Energy Environment Cabinet, Division of Hazardous Waste, Tony's group really helped us out because there's something unique about our 2-megawatt solar array. The 2-megawatt solar array is built on a brownfield. So those gaps in the solar array panels are actually where we have test wells. So we have to maintain access to those test wells because we have to sample the water for many, many years. Long after I'm gone and we're all gone, somebody will be sampling that water, right? So we took a brownfield that was, what do we call it, environmentally encumbered? It was environmentally encumbered. We took old buildings down historically and we said, what can we do with this? Well, that's when we got innovative. We started thinking about, we needed more renewable energy. Remember, we started with that big number of 0, so we had to get more. We had competitive pressure, we had customer pressure, we had interest internal from our own employees, and then we got innovative. And we approached Kentucky and said, hey, this is what we would like to do. Kenya and I had conversations, we worked through the details, and now you see this picture, right? So we have that 2-megawatt array. And guess what we're waiting on? Those of you who are manufacturers, supply chain issues, right? Have we had a few in the last couple years? We're waiting on transformers and switchgear. So as soon as the transformers and switchgear get here, we will literally flip the switch. What does that do for us in Lexington? provides about 10% of our total energy footprint for a Lexmark site. We are staying behind the meter. We're not putting any of this on the grid. It will go completely and totally to our facility. That's where we're starting. We're starting at 2 megawatts. And then hopefully, after we learn some more and look at finances, we'll be able to expand because we have more room. We have more room to do more to expand that solar array. But again, it's not just about the solar array. We're also using this as an opportunity to incorporate our STEM initiatives. So did you know not too far from here, there's also a high school in Lexington, Frederick Douglass High School. I'm going to give them a shout out. There's a group of students at Frederick Douglass High School. They have created their own solar coalition. That's what it's called. They are learning and trying to get solar arrays at Frederick Douglass High School in Lexington because that building was designed to do it. They've come and presented to us. We've presented to them. We're sharing knowledge and expertise and learning with high school students. So earlier we had a session about how we want to drive down deep into secondary education, even primary education. Man, they are really smart. And they're super passionate. If you could see the passion of these high school students around trying to get solar for Frederick Douglass High School, it's infectious, right? So we had a meeting just a few weeks ago. I had them at Lexmark. They took us through their presentation, took us through their goals, and then we walked out to our solar array and showed them and said, see, this is what you can do, some sharing of ideas. So we're sharing ideas with high school students, and so it's really rewarding. Now, if you look at this solar array, I'm going to say this because it's a pretty cool idea. I hope it's okay that I say this. We're going to put pollinator flowers in there, right? Instead of having sheep to mow the grass, we're going to have pollinator flowers. We're going to plant those this fall, and we'll plant them multiple times. And then we're going to hopefully, this is a hopefully, put beehives around those pollinators, just a few. Those beehives will make honey, and we're going to take that honey. The goal is hopefully to take that honey and make mead and beer from the honey. Is that not a cool idea?
That's awesome.
That's a great idea, right? So we're not the first to do that, but there are other solar arrays around the world that do that. But here's what's unique. That was employee-led. It was an innovative idea. It was connecting to another part of a true, like, how can we make this more than just about a solar array? So we got the STEM education initiatives. We've got pollinators. We've got research with the University of Kentucky. Our own R&D folks are engaged in this. So it's really a large project for us in all the things that it encompasses.
Wow, John, that is just awesome. First, thank you to Lexmark for your continued commitment to Kentucky. To have an innovative corporation that continues to choose Kentucky, but not only choose Kentucky, but be integrated in communities so deeply, I am so grateful for it. Congratulations on your big announcement. They had surprises. They were ready for us today, y'all. Just so exciting to hear about Lexmark's continued growth. And then I can't move on without saying, you are brilliant, sir. You called it on the solar. I'm super happy to hear more about solar solutions being implemented in our communities on a day-to-day basis. Wow, with all of the wonderful notes about what you all are each doing in community, let's dig into that a little bit more, that community commitment, right? Because we have a unique platform here at this conference to maybe inspire some additional corporations, to inspire our young people, which, by the way, Kentucky's statewide science fair is featured on television, national television, for the innovative, brilliant ideas that are coming from our young people every day, every year. I'm thrilled to be a part of that and to have judged that competition. It made me feel like I needed to go back to school, right? Let me ask each of you, what is the motivator for your organizations and or projects to lean into innovation in thinking about some of these sustainability solutions? If there has to be a particular button that was pushed that seems to be waking up your talent and crews to think differently about these solutions, what does it usually tend to be? And Louis, I'll actually start with you on this one.
Two things before I answer that. First, when you have your beer made out of honey, we'll take the distillers that's left over and make more natural gas, which will get to the community thing next. And I forgot my amazing fact. Agriculture and energy are overlap in a lot of ways. We heard yesterday, and it's true, we commit a third of our corn in America to ethanol. This is an energy and agriculture working together. The interesting fact is that because we burn less coal, there is less sulfur in the acid rain, and now our farmers are buying sulfur because we don't get it from the rain anymore. Unintended consequences or whatever. So most people now, if they're plant science professors were here from yesterday, there's N, P, K, and S. And one of the nice things about our liquid fertilizer, it has everything that was in the corn is still in the fertilizer. We scrub out, when the methane leaves the digesters, we scrub out the sulfurs and other things to get it to pipeline quality. That sulfur goes back in the fertilizer, which will give our sulfur is used to boost protein, and our cattle guys love that. So that's my interesting fact. Because we burn less coal, we're now buying sulfur, but this will send more sulfur out to the ground. Wow. I think for innovation for us, it is about partnerships and problem solving. And our experience and our team and our leadership is very good at that. We did not begin looking at grants. We did not begin looking at subsidies. We did it the old-fashioned way with capital and equity and working a deal that way. And our leadership is particularly good at that. But it was, as we heard yesterday from the biomass speaker, there was demand pull, right? Everything we're talking about in a certain way is getting off the grid, right? And then while you're at it, you might as well green up. So that's part of how we're looking at deploying existing technologies. Now, once we have that, and particularly in this stream of digestate that is very valuable as fertilizer, we're exploring other things and other new innovations and leading edge innovations that might do even more with that. And certainly out in the countryside, anything you grow with this fertilizer is natural, low carbon, and can be differentiated and marketed for premiums. Corn can be sold back, but anything you do with this in terms of community relationships is very strong. The cabinet has been excellent with us because there's a lot of bourbon production expansion, including in Bardstown and other folks than our current partnership. And so we're envisioning working with the cabinet and working with all that industry to provide a network of assets and, at the end of the day, infrastructure, which is what the conference is about, that moves those digestates around, moves that whole stillage around. We can really build a network, a system, a process for really this whole region of Kentucky, much like building out a water system, if you will. Now we'll start with some temporary solutions and work toward permanent solutions, but we're excited to explore with the community how to optimize all the assets we're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. And what I love about your answer there is that it reflects environmental changes in real time and the innovation in real time that needs to happen, because there's a real role of experimentation in all of this and a really important need for listening and community that you guys have down so well. And Andrew, I'd like to ask you the same question. You know, in thinking about with your the company working quite a bit both outside of Kentucky and within Kentucky, what really motivates your organization and team to continue pushing that envelope of sustainability?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'd say, I think originally you kind of mentioned the tipping point, right? And so I think I described it before, you know, the natural tipping point would be, you know, 12-year adventure with Keystone XL, where you realize, okay, maybe they're just not that into you. And so our last, so when we were looking at decarbonizing our existing footprint, which as I said is challenging, you know, one of the simple ways that we thought that we could do it was decarbonizing our existing crude oil system. And so a crude oil pipeline, all of its emissions are generated through electricity. So because crude oil is a liquid, it gets pumped. So a pumping station uses huge amounts of electricity. about 20 megawatts per station. And so we had 25 to 30 stations in the United States between North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas. And so when you look at most companies, we actually look very similar to like a Lexmark with multiple operating, or a chemical company with multiple operating nodes. And so what we found was there was no service provider who'd be able to offer us a renewable product in all of those jurisdictions, in all of those different electricity markets. So we made it ourselves. And so what we've done to date with that kind of crude oil system is by 2025, we expect the emissions profile of that to be zero, through basically the build out of a very large solar and wind platform. And so for us to decarbonize that pipeline, so that's one pipeline that moves about 800,000 barrels of oil per day, that's about 900 megawatts. So that's a lot. And so that, I would say, that's where I saw our company move the most in innovation. And what we decided to do is, what you'll find is kind of similar with the behind-the-meter solar. So behind-the-meter solar generally exists because you've got a 10 megawatt load, and doing a large utility scale project becomes very challenging, because to get to a utility scale, large scale solar wind project, you need 200, 300 megawatts. And so what we started looking at was, okay, for our, let's say we have 50 megawatts. Okay, what if we bought a 200 megawatt project and we built out a capability internally that went and got third-party customers who would then kind of join the party and sign up for the same deal that we were structuring with our customer, our internal customer. And so what that led to was more renewables that we're going to be developing. But more importantly, when you talk to think of like a chemical company. So a chemical company buys a lot of electricity, but if you put them in the corner of the room and you ask them for all their decarbonization fears, given that we're close to Halloween, what scares them the most is scope 1. And so when you get to a scope 1 emissions reduction, that's where you need to, I would say, get into the passenger seat with your customer, and our customers have pulled us along into renewable natural gas, hydrogen, carbon capture, sequestration, and that's kind of led to these kind of different projects where you've got this large infrastructure. Awesome. I think I answered the question, maybe.
And I really appreciate that response. And in thinking about the motivations, John, I remember you talking a lot about hearing from your customer community and how long that expectation of sustainability has been really at the top priority for Lexmark. Can you tell us a little bit about how that contributes to economic development from the corporate perspective? How Lexmark, locating in a state that is very pro-sustainability, ready to collaborate in terms of energy and environment, what does that mean for the bottom line for a large corporation working to serve that global customer base?
Yeah, it's a great question, Monique. The simple answer is we would not be able to stay in business. We would not. If we didn't focus on sustainability, carbon neutrality, ESG, like some previous presenters said, energy efficiency, like Andrew's talked about. When we look at what we call requests for proposals or requests for quotations or tenders in Europe, every single one has a requirement for us to tell our sustainability story. So for us to remain a viable business, it was critical that we were able to work with the Commonwealth and everybody we talked about and everybody that's been so great to work with, for us to continue to exist. If we don't do it, we will be out of business in a heartbeat. It is that simple. We did a study. This is just in Germany, just to give you kind of a fact. Our German team said, okay, if we have 100 questions on a request for proposal, and they cover all kinds of different things. So one of the big things out there now is IT security, right? So we all worry about that. So they're going to ask you about IT security. They're going to ask you about your financial status. They're going to ask you. So you might get 100 questions. In those 100 questions, 30 of them were directly related to sustainability. So a third of all questions were focused on what are you doing in sustainability in all its forms, right? Innovation, how can you help us? This is what we're saying, something new we're seeing now. How can you help us be more sustainable? So it's not just what are you doing, which we have to tell them. Then it's how can you help us be more sustainable? So if we don't do this, we're out of business. We have to do it.
That's such an important point, because that's an aspect where culture needs process, right? Earlier today, we had our Kentucky Innovation Entrepreneurship Support Organizations call. Kentucky Innovation funds 6 regional entrepreneurship hubs across the state of Kentucky. And today's topic was actually about responding to RFPs and being ready to be asked the hard questions about how are you uplifting the Commonwealth. So to think that so much of the RFP process for corporations and sort of that thought process and processes in the day-to-day work so revolves around sustainability, it just further underlines why it's such an important priority to our Commonwealth. And not only from the corporate perspective, but from the community perspective, being ready to embrace innovations, especially innovations in environment and energy, is so important, right? It can make or break a project coming to fruition. So Lewis, I'm coming over to you to tell me a little bit about how you've experienced the community's reaction to some of these projects, and how has it affected economic development in the towns and counties of Kentucky?
A lot of people perceive that the agriculture community is kind of slow to adopt innovation. That hadn't been my experience. Maybe in other parts of the country, but where you have small fields and multiple soil types, I think Tennessee, Kentucky, this area of the country and the agriculture here is very scrappy and innovative. Commodities, by definition, are competitive and low cost. So if you're not constantly evaluating your business, as John said, you're not in business very long, whether you're a small farmer or a large farmer. We've had a few focus groups with farmers, shared with them the fertilizer in the Digestate and what we think its values are. They're ready. They're ready. We like to say we'll be pulled toward folks that want to partner with us. Now, we're not going to push this out, but we'll be pulled toward people that want to partner with us and figure out the optimized and most highly valued things to grow with it. Corn, beans, wheat, hay, everything we grow. So that would be, we can work with others, are working with others. We have some outreach to do. I had an earlier slide, 40,000 acres to sustainably apply this fertilizer. Now, it's based on a phosphorus limit for those that get that. So there'll still be additional fertilizer on these crops, but to sustainably apply it, we share all of our clients' sustainability goals. It's a lot of land to coordinate and a pretty big logistics challenge. So a lot of outreach, education. This is natural. It's essentially organic. It's a good material, and that's how we need to work with the communities.
I'm so grateful for that point, because my innovation career begins with FFA, the Future Farmers of America. I love that program because not only is it underscoring important foundations in agriculture, but embracing that perspective of environment. And a lot of times the agriculture community is the first to lead the way. They're so important to our Commonwealth. I'm so glad you underlined that.
My daughter was FFA president in Tennessee.
So I love it.
She takes after her mom.
So she's got that blue corduroy jacket, right?
She does.
It's wonderful. We've been talking a lot about all of the wonderful motivations into collaboration and some new projects coming on board in energy and environment in Kentucky, to really just everything about, what are the fields that go into this particular area of work as it relates to innovation. I want to ask a very pointed question of what do you think is the most exciting incoming opportunity? Why? Because I need something to think about on the way home. But then two, I want to make sure that as an audience, we have an opportunity to open our mind into what's possible and really embrace Kentucky being at the leading and cutting edge. So when I ask most exciting opportunity, I'm going to push my panelists to think of something really cool and interesting. And I have something in my pocket, too, to pull out in just a moment about cool, exciting things. I'm coming to you first, Andrew. What is an exciting opportunity in this frontier to you?
So you know, I'll put it this way. So, for example, on the hydrogen front, when you're thinking about Kentucky, so you know, think of it as, you know, you kind of have from a transportation perspective, for lack of a better word, a golden triangle, right? Which I don't know why, but that's what my mind thinks of whenever I see the kind of tri-city of Louisville, Lexington, and then what I'll call Cincinnati, the good part, which is the airport. No, but which I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around the Cincinnati airport being in Kentucky. But the good news is that means more jobs, most likely, for Kentucky. And so when you think about, you know, those areas, I would say the amount of industry that you have in that area and the amount of trucking traffic, the amount of transportation corridors, the industries like Lexmark, like Amazon, UPS, Nucor, et cetera, that are in this area, what you have is huge amounts of energy users. And so, like, I come back to Louis kind of talked about something that I always tell people is, like, you know, there's two truths in life. One, we're going to, like, consume more energy tomorrow than we did today. And probably 2 days from now, we're going to continue to consume more energy. But what we kind of have to use innovation and creativity on is how do you lower the carbon intensity of that? And so what that means is that, you know, in the kind of, I'll keep using it, the golden triangle, you have huge opportunities to decarbonize, whether it's the behind the meter solar, whether it's building hydrogen production, whether it's RNG, you have great opportunities.
Fantastic. John, what gets you excited about this field and working in it?
Yeah, so it's another great question. So I'm going to tell you before I have a bias, I already know what I'm going to say. So I'm a native Kentuckian. I have lived in other places, but I'm from Kentucky. I think it's the people. I think when you look at the history of the state, and I'm not saying other people in other states don't do the same thing, we work hard. And we are innovative. We invented bourbon. Come on, right? I'm just kidding. So what you have, I think the time is right. If you look at all the earlier presenters and what the history of success is in the state related to innovation and related to having hardworking people, just give them a job that's rewarding, give them something to shoot for, a goal, and we'll go do it. Right? We'll go do it. And so I think that's something that we can't underestimate is the passion of the people in the state, the willingness to learn, the willingness to be innovative, creating that culture of innovation here. And if you look at, and I'll go back to the experience we had as an international company working with the Energy and Environment Cabinet, right? Like I said before, we would not be here today if they hadn't had that spirit of working together. So I think the other thing we also have to do is realize in this space, and a lot of people throw out a lot of quotes, but we're just getting started, right? If you've been, you know, my educational background is biology and chemistry. I was a high school science teacher 30 years ago. I am that old. And so where we are today in this space, the word sustainability didn't exist, right? 1986 is when it came out. You couldn't go to college and get a degree in sustainability. UK's got an Institute for Sustainable Manufacturing within the College of Engineering. Those things didn't exist. Now they do. So you have that. You have the customer pressures, the environmental pressures. We all know what's going on with the climate. We're just getting started. So we have all these things where people are finally coming together in this very important space. It's going to drive innovation. It's going to drive accomplishment. But the thing that we have to be really careful about is we can't say that we're good with where we're at. We always have to strive to continually get better. We can be proud of what we accomplished as companies, as individuals, but we're always going to have to be that mindset. What's next? How do I get better as an individual? How do I get better as a company? Because the challenges are going to continue to come.
Such a wonderful point, especially the point about education. I feel like every time I drive past University of Kentucky's campus, something's new. They have a new social impact program. They have a new venture capital model. These are the sort of things that come together in the innovation ecosystem that not only boost the culture, but also the community actively getting involved in this work. I love that perspective. Coming around to you, Lewis, tell me what gets you most excited about the frontier of this work?
When I had lunch with Jeff Harper at the Kentucky Farm Bureau, I said, you know, we're both passionate in this region of the country is about family farms. And so much of commercial agriculture, commercial energy is all about scale. You got to get bigger, get out. Of course, most of our nitrogen fertilizer now is made from natural gas, all right? So we take the natural gas, we make ammonia, and most of our nitrogen. And those are big plants, and they're using fossil fuel natural gas. So this is an opportunity, again, to merge the energy and agriculture working together to put those nutrients back on the ground. We are a manufacturer of fertilizer. The digesters are. And they can be delivered at a regional scale. You can't build an ammonia plant like in Louisiana on a natural gas pipeline, Andrew, that at scale. So I've spent a career, all my buddies have spent a career trying to reach out to those family farms. And this whole conference, and particularly the federal grant programs, are emphasizing through the Biden administration the underserved regions, the people that have not had the same opportunities and access. And it's just exciting for me to think about how the deployment of these energy agriculture interfaces don't leave behind those that choose or those that have the assets to farm at a smaller scale. And it's very local, it's very organic, it's all the things we all want. It's farm to table, it can be all of that. It's really exciting to think about how you work. Ag's a people business, everything's a people business. So it's really exciting to me to think about how to use these technologies and these relationships to see how big we can grow that in this region.
Such a beautiful point, Lewis. And it really speaks to what gets me most excited as leader of Kentucky Innovation within the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development, that access to opportunity component, right? Kentucky is responsible for historically fueling our nation. And so to see Kentucky's leadership in the future of driving, empowering our nation, it's something that is truly inspiring, and it's the how we go about it that makes sense. With the cabinet working to bring record access to capital resources in partnership with our federal government, it's not only helping all Kentuckians, but it's helping more than just a few. Let me say that again. All and not just a few. There's space for everyone in Kentucky, be it colleges and universities, our entrepreneurship community, our small business community, our corporate community, to have a role in this leadership position for our state. And I'm just so glad to be working with each of you here on this stage. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences of collaboration, success, and growth in this area in Kentucky. Truly thank you. Before I close and hand it back over to the moderators, I just have to thank the Energy Cabinet for all of its wonderful work. I'm waving at you, Carrie. Thank you so much to Kenya. Amazing. Truly everyone in that cabinet is fantastic, and they collaborate with the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development. Let's lean into that. There's no better time than now to start a business in Kentucky, and to start a business that's focused on energy and sustainability, working with these fine folks. It's just a great time to be a Kentuckian. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great discussion.
Thank you.